this one also? This is also working. Okay. Thank you for joining the last session today. It's an Ask Me Anything About AI and UX. That means I don't have any questions. They don't know what they have to talk. You should ask whatever you like. You can ask, do you marry me? You can ask whatever you want, work for me. Or you can ask anything about AI and UX. Oh, first question. If there's no question, I will try to find a question. So, okay, Clemens, you have the first question.
So, Clemens, how much is the pizza margarita, the large one? No, another question, sorry. So how do you see the AI Regulation Act for European Union, especially when it comes to high-risk applications, especially when it's about product safety, and how you deal with that when you talk about, oh, I want this great application, especially in UX, but also that's Gen AI, which is kind of not allowed to do stuff which we kind of use later on. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Who should answer? Everyone? Okay, everyone. Who wants to start?
You.
Okay, when you can't decide, I will decide.
Yes.
Torsten, you start.
Well, I criticized AI a lot, so maybe I'm the wrong person to answer to this question. That's why
It's always an answer.
why I was asking. So, well, I'm not directly or have to deal with it directly because I'm not building products, and I'm right. Still, I personally look at the AI Act from a different angle, and for me personally, it's still not enough. So for me personally, it's still just a beginning, and I'm rather thinking about what else do we need, where do we need to specify things more and make things more clear. So that's where I am at the moment from my personal point of view. So it's still not enough, though I'm happy we have it.
Okay, Sasha.
Yeah, thanks. Yes. Well, yes, it's a difficult question. Yes, indeed. Well, there are regularities and there are reasons for them. So usually, building products, we have to follow those AI acts and whatever rules are coming. But I think I would prefer to discuss that from another angle because I think a decent point we are missing is that some of those risks we probably will not finally solve. That might be the overall issue, and hence I think we need to take our responsibility serious, whatever we do, despite we are doing concepts, products, whatever. And I only can talk about myself, but I try to get into, for instance, schools, universities, as often as possible to empower the users, the people for whom we building those products, to empower them to use those products in a responsible manner, to understand what's going on. Yes, I think it's quite important to educate people. I remember once it's not related to AI, but I did a workshop with students, and they did complain about gathering data and that they get transparent and that there's no privacy. And then I explained to them, okay, you probably still live at home, and are you aware that your parents can get onto the router which connects you to the internet and can see which website you visit? And then there was kind of silence to those adolescent younger boys in the room. That was quite interesting. So then I explained them how to use torrent and darknet and things like that to solve the issue. But I hope you get the point. It's about responsibility, education, enablement. I think this is the number one aspect. It's way more important than to establish rules which people can in the end ignore, and especially if it's developed in some other countries and cultures.
Yeah, that idea of getting around the rules, right? I just want to talk a little bit more about that. So I'm based in Toronto. We have specific rules and regulations around privacy and AI. We're also very near to a neighbor that has very different rules in terms of what can be done and what can't be done. So I think that there's something there around really trying to take a point of view and a position, right? Your country's doing that, but as an organization. I think that that's where it needs to go, right? Because these rules, again, other countries will do things, other people will try and move around. So as a company, as an individual, we need to actually take stands in terms of what we're going to do and where we're going to go. Because if we just wait for the lowest denominator to set the bar, we're not going to be going in a good direction.
I'm not sure why you passed the mic to me. I didn't say I want to answer the question. In my view, we must consider the different antecedents of the whole AI conundrum. And first of all, there is an economic aspect to it. It is making some people money, and the people it's making money is not you and I. And the second part is it is political as well, because the amount of data amassed is also benefiting certain, not even organizations, systems, if you would. However, if not managed properly, it's all going to cave in and everyone will be affected. So I do foresee a situation where, because a lot of things are sort of outrunning us, as it were. So things we were discussing this earlier when we were considering the fact that the paradigm might be slightly wrong, where we're going, and then we're realizing, there are all these issues to be considered. And they will have to be considered. So there might be a future where AI implementation is slightly slowed down or limited or redirected in a particular manner. Now, what that would look like, I don't know. And I can't even begin to pretend like I know. But we will have to face it at some point. And there was something else I wanted to say, but I'm sorry I've forgotten that. It may come back to me at some point.
Can I just ask a follow-up on that? So you talk about in a future where it might be slowed down, right? In your mind, what would be the drivers or the reasons why that would start to happen? Is it going to be individuals, governments? What's going to actually start that process if that takes place?
Right, that's a fantastic question, and one that juggles my brain slightly, but I do have a perspective on that, which is when you look at the ethical side of things and the data usage side of things, which at the minute is rather not very well managed. So the AI organizations themselves, the people that have this product, absolve themselves of any issues with that, for instance, right? And many people blindly are walking into putting up all sorts of data on there. What I foresee is a situation where the lines get so blurred that very important systems like government systems will actually be under threat. See, I consult for a government organization, and if I wasn't very aware of some of the data issues that we're discussing, I could easily put data from my research on any of the GPT things to help me do some analysis. And I could put that just everything on there, and some of it is quite a lot of sensitive data. Well, no one is monitoring me, and I've put it out there already, for instance. Okay, so I foresee a future where such things will happen. I believe they are happening. I don't think every researcher that's consulting or contracting for a government organization in the world is very conscious of this, because there's pressure to deliver. So, but I foresee a point where it will be a case of, some data is out there that we don't want to be out there and accessible to everybody. It's going to be driven by some sense of control. And to implement that control, there's got to be some bolts and knots that be tightened, which will slow things down slightly. There might even be further commoditization, quite a big word, of the AI thing. In my head, is a little bit like how gas is distributed. So, retailing of gas sort of. So I see that sort of, what is going where and why, some sort of stage gating that will happen. But that will slow things down a little bit because they would like to get in control of that a bit more. And on the other hand, I just might be building skies, what do you call it? Building, what's that saying? Like the moon on a stick, really. I might just be making things up, but then we'll see. This is just what I have I foresee going on.
Vivian, any answer to Clement's question, or what should we ask? Because you're not in the European Union, but don't know a better regulation, maybe?
I have something to say, though.
Okay.
Okay? It's a little takeoff, Clemens, if you're hearing me. I want to draw analogy from the manufacturing. When you say manufacturing, like these chairs, for example, they go through a process, there's a tooling, and if there's an error in any of them, by the time you realize it, you have like 100,000 chairs or a few chairs with the errors, and you stop press, you stop your assembly line, you correct the tool, and you rebuild. Okay, that's the old traditional manufacturing example. Now, if you look at from the point of view of data and training and AI, ML, or ML resulting in AI, the scale, I've been thinking through this is my own line, please excuse me if it's confusing, that the scale of error and recall is exponentially very, very high now than it would have been otherwise. So your scale of recall is unimaginable now because it's almost impossible to retrieve and correct those errors. And hence, it's very important to have regularization, just like the manufacturing. You finish your tooling first, you perfect the art of manufacturing, even outcomes from the AI, and then make it into production line, such a way that it benefits larger society or manufacturing or whatever it is that you're doing with AI. Make sense?
Thank you.
Not prototype. The actual fine-tuning of what the AI is going to get the outcome of, it should be perfected by regularization, by removing of biases and all the governance that's required for it to go mainstream. An ISO or any manufacturing processes will not allow you to manufacture a faulty vehicle, for example. But that's not happening in AI, right?
It's an ask me anything about attendees to the speakers and not between speakers, okay?
Oops.
So, next question.
I have a question. I'm leading 2 technical teams in a CX UX department consisting of data engineers, data scientists, cloud engineers, software engineers. And I have the feeling that this is really a key driver of CX UX success these days. But on the other hand, I don't see many other companies adopting their CX UX department in that way. And I'm super curious, what do you think about adding, is it necessary these days to add technical profiles to your CX UX department?
You should, actually, because you don't have to be a mathematician or a deep tech scientist, but as a designer, knowledge is very important. Because I say that from a traditional background that I come to. I used to, if you don't mind a small story, I come from a background where there were no computers, so BC, before computers, I mean. And I used to work for Hallmark, and we used to actually write like this big, happy birthday, take it into a camera, bring it into small form factor and so on to make that hot foil stamping on a card to see happy birthday on top. But then came computers and typesetting and all of that. And if I did not change my ability to learn those tools, I would have been a dinosaur myself. So today we work with defining and designing our own LLM. We're building a stealth startup tool which helps B2C and B2G, that's business to business and business to government. So what am I trying to say is that, yes, it is very important for us to have the knowledge. And some practical knowledge of it. You can always hire engineers to work with you as a group of stakeholders to get the outcomes. But designers with ignorance to AI, ML, tech tools is not a very happy thing for the individual.
So I see AI as a tool. And as a tool, you need to know enough about it to apply it in the situation that you're working on and working through. So, if you think of construction, right? You might be really, really experienced with a certain tool and can do a lot with it. Other people don't need to know that much. They just use it and execute it for very simple tasks. So that's the way I'm thinking about it, is that this is a tool. You need to make sure that you know enough about it to apply it to what you're doing today. And then I would also say, try to learn a little bit more so that you can ride the wave, right, to where it's going to go tomorrow. Because things are changing, things are advancing, and you don't want to get left behind. So I don't believe you need to have a machine learning engineer in your CX, but you need to, as a CX team, understand how do you apply AI and what's going to be important for you to know and understand about this tool.
Well, I know you, and I know that you're working for a company developing software for tax lawyers, and so I think, which is quite important to understand, and which pays on what you said, is that, well, if you use AI to develop software for people using AI in your software, I assume it would be kind of helpful to understand the AI you are developing. But your tax lawyers, they probably don't need to be experts in data science and data engineering. And this is something which sometimes gets mixed up. Yes, are you a user or a developer of these experiences? So this is something you should also consider by talking about that. Because if you're a designer using AI for creating stunning images, anyway, something which is thoughtful, which you can discuss, but then you don't need to be a data scientist. But if you develop software for designer which involves AI, then you should need this knowledge.
Right, so from my perspective, very simple, which is, did you attend my talk? Great, exactly. So back to one of the points I made in my talk, which is you must identify first for yourself where in your workflow can you benefit from that sort of automation and to what extent, and then what will do that for you. If you're clear what that trajectory looks like for you, then you can wholeheartedly embrace what you need to embrace without thinking that it's got to be one size fits all. Everything is got to be done with it, not necessarily. That's the point I wanted to make. Just look at your workflow, what you do, and say, okay, where can we actually do a bit of automation with AI? And what does that give us? What are we getting by doing this? But on top of that, as Everton said, you've got to know that this is coming, is a tool. It helps you use it, but what for? Okay.
Maybe I can just add 2 sentences. Also, yes, you need to have or to get this understanding, because what we see nowadays is that everybody is using AI, especially Gen AI, without really understanding what's going on in that machine. And if you know that even the engineers that are building these things do not 100% understand why these things are spitting out whatever they are spitting out, right? This is, I don't know, for me this is really like not only confusing, but maybe I'm afraid of that. And so we are using these things need to understand at least the little basics, and most of the people do not know. They do not know what is AI, what's not AI. They do not know about the different types of AI, and they do not know what Gen AI is and what for they should use it and what for not. So yes, we need this basic understanding. That's one layer. And the second layer is we need also a basic understanding of other professions, and that's not only about AI, but in general, because that helps us communicate with the other people, right? So that's also super important for everything.
Well, I might add one more aspect, because sometimes you also can somehow overstock your team. So that means that you have too many experts on some topic, and then this expertise gets to kind of a self-purpose. So usually, not always, but there are some projects where regular, in quotes, developers are fine and you will succeed and everything is fine. But there's one person thinking, because it's related to voice, we need a linguist in this team. And then this linguist starts doing benchmarks, developing new models, measuring some word error rates and whatever, and wastes half of the project budget only to make the transcription 1% better. So I realized that often, sometimes it's better to have not as many experts as you might think.
Thank you. Another question? Yes. 2 more questions. Ladies first. Sorry.
Thank you. My question is, what could be the biggest challenge to increase accessibility and inclusion in our products by using AI? Which opportunities do you see?
So the biggest challenge, it's interesting because to me, I guess the way that I'm thinking about it right now is that, this is a conversation that we need to have. Like I feel like the conversation doesn't always take place in terms of, how are we thinking about accessibility? How are we thinking about diversity of users? How are we thinking about scenarios? How are we thinking about some of the, ethical impacts? Like people are talking about it, but it doesn't seem to be part of a design process to actually explore these things in a very considered way. I feel like, based on accessibility, in terms of what was defined like 10 years ago, there's a way that we now approach things. I feel like where we are right now, and if I were to answer, I think right now we just don't have a process or a pattern or a way to actually explore things fully, or as fully as we can, right? To truly understand. People are talking about it, they're saying it's important for us to understand, but how do we explore the data sets? How do we explore the scenarios? How do we, as a team, as a group, as an organization, think through the scenarios? How do we define what's appropriate, what's not appropriate? I think most organizations are just, pulling it together, in terms of just hoping and praying that they're doing it right, but they're not sure. And I just don't think that there's a definitive approach. So maybe that's what I would say. I'm speaking out loud as I'm thinking it through, but I think right now the challenge is that there's no definitive approach. We're missing things, we're not doing things we should be doing, and people are okay with that because they just want to get tools out there and they want to just get some of those profits and or some of those savings that they're aiming for. And the shortcut could lead to really bad things in the future.
Right, so what are the challenges? The challenges would be, in my view, would be mainly that of assumption, and the assumption that people are incorporating that into what they're doing. And then realizing halfway through when there's been some catastrophic events, and in this case, let's think beyond just generative AI and think about all other AI stuff out there. I think that's one huge challenge going on. And as you rightly said, we're talking accessibility, but we're not necessarily doing accessibility that much. Now, here's my hope. My hope is that AI can actually drive that. I hope that AI makes digital products more accessible, more usable for people who have got access needs. And I think there's a use case for it. And I think certain scenarios like medical cases, for instance, will have to drive that sort of conversation a bit more. But then we just have to wait and see.
I would like to say maybe 2 things. First thing is that maybe it's not so much of an AI question, but more of a general technology question, right? Because I think in general we are talking so much about this, and we all know this Silicon Valley mantra, right? Fail fast, fail often, build MVPs, learn, relearn, build a new MVP, blah, blah, blah. And these MVPs are by default quite exclusive in general. And I think this is something we need to change. And therefore, I think it's not only an AI thing, but it's a change in our mindset, how we build technology, and at least be able to decide from the very first place how or who should be able to use this tool, because we are not asking ourselves these questions. We are always building for very the typical 4 persona types, right, that fit so well in our presentations. So that's one thing. And then looking onto the AI level, I think there is maybe one chance with AI, and that's not a Gen AI, but more a general AI thing, to build more adaptive services, tools, whatever, that can adapt to the person and change, in whatever case, to make it more accessible for the person. So that's a big chance, and that's the bigger threat maybe, the big challenge is, and in my talk I was speaking about signals, strong and weak signals, right? And if we talk about users that are these people we try to include, they are always the weak signals, right? We all can walk, and the person that is in the wheelchair is in the data set is a weak signal because it's just one person out of 100. So in the way how especially Gen AI works nowadays, this person falls out of the data set. And so this is maybe the biggest challenge or the biggest threat that we need to take into account and be very careful when we speak about creating stuff with Gen AI that should be more accessible.
I have one example to share on what's being done as a challenge to solve. It's one of our customers for an OTT channel to interact with television, and the built-in camera within the TV is being used to understand sign languages so you can interact. So there are steps being taken by organizations to build such products and services for accessibility. There are also a couple of startups doing that for example, retina correction and color corrections and reading by embedding smart lenses. So there is some progress in that using AI, but it's not mainstream yet.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Yeah, so we heard a lot about how we use AI and how we can use AI. I was wondering, do we also need to adapt our approach to research when it comes to how our users use AI? Because it's a new field for us and for them.
Short answer is yes, I think we should actually. It is part of understanding the users. And in fact, I could argue that one of the things that was really missing in the whole proliferation of AI is not very good user testing. A lot of the user testing was done in the beta phase when they've released, and then they're more monitoring usage in terms of what people are excited about. It's sort of taking the opportunity to train the AI a bit even more, rather than really zooming down in proper research to understand not just the different use cases, if you would, where users use it, but the actual needs driving that, the real user needs, I don't think that is very clearly understood. And also, I don't think that there are some good collaborative design with the users when it comes to AI. The best, at best, is just, well, we're going to let people give us more data to train the models on, as opposed to actually getting out to interact with the users. I haven't read a single study on how any AI producer has actually gone out to do proper user research on it. Should we do that? Yes. And if all of us in here working for technical teams and all, you've got products where you would have to integrate AI, it should be part of your research plan. And not just as let's understand the journey with respect to using this particular product when it comes to AI, but a little bit beyond that to understand what need actually drives that from the consumer perspective, and then merge or match that with whatever is driving that from the producer, the organizational perspective. Because most of the time, what is driving it from the organizational perspective is following the trend. It is the trend, and then all sorts of promises, which you debunked this morning, promises of how it will make things cheaper and this and that and that. It makes it cheaper on the one hand and not on the other hand. So kind of balancing all of that is one thing, but really having the view of the user also makes sense. A lot of AI stuff has been shoved down the user. I don't know how many people here who have had to been forced to click OK for your phone to do an update just to enable a particular AI capability that you didn't sign up to. Or if you use Google Mail, you must have noticed that suddenly it's completing your sentences, just like Microsoft Word. I don't remember saying I want that. Okay, and lots and lots of these applications are writing people to say, we are now integrating AI functionality into it. They're updating their terms and conditions, but they're not asking your permission, and they're not involving you in it. So it is being shoved at people. There's a bit of buzz and excitement about it, obviously, because it's novelty for now, until the inconveniences start to reign. So I do think that what you raised is less of a question and more of a proper, valid point of consideration and reflection by design teams.
And I would like to add, I think it's maybe an additional question to that is, on which levels should this research take place? So is it only on team level or organization level? I think we need some more research on a more societal level, because there is so much we do not know, and there is so much we do not know, well, how do people use it? How do they see it? What does it do with the people while they are using it? And this is not a research topic for a company, right? This is a topic for us as a society. And so for me, the question would be, how can we bring it to that level? And we were talking about regulation, because there are some things, there should be some guardrails where we say, as long as this is not clarified, this technology should not be led to the wild, or this certain model or whatever, if these things. And I know it's a long way to get there. I don't have answers, but this is the discussion we need. So to bring it to these levels, and also to make it mandatory steps actually for this technology to fulfill.
Thank you. We have one more fast question.
So I love this discussion and all of the chats today. We've talked and sort of been critical of AI, but as we sort of think about closing out, what's good? What's the thing that you're most excited about with AI and UX, and for all of us to be less pessimistic about it?
Good question.
Well, I like to take your answer to somehow reply to your question regards research. I struggle, for instance, with reading all those papers because there's way too much research of often very bad quality. And thanks to AI, I have a chance to get through all of this. Yes, it helps me to summarize everything, to see it is really relevant, to find somehow the needle in the hay. And that's something I really love about AI. As you mentioned, it's just a tool which makes me more effective.
So there was a piece of work that was carried out at Loughborough University. And
in short.
Say again? Yeah, sorry. And the tool that was developed was very good. So this professor, who happened to be my professor as well, he and his team developed this tool where with AI they can actually simulate what people with visual impairment see. And that has helped developing interfaces for giving developers really first-hand view of what different visual impairments can look like. That's a good thing and can answer that accessibility question. Was that short enough?
May I add one? So I think the cool thing about especially Gen AI and let's say about these tools like Midjourney is that they give me a chance to express myself in a creative way. I can imagine something, type something in a prompt, right, and get something out. And if I think about kids and if I teach them how to use this, I see a lot of positive things. If we make sure that what gets out of the machine is not stolen from somewhere, or that the person that the data from the person that was used to train these things gets somehow get something back from that, there is a lot of potential to express ourselves. A former professor of mine, Frida Nake from the University of Bremen, said, human thinks the image, machine creates it. And if we see it this way, and if we can make sure that what the machine creates is not stolen somewhere, then that is a positive thing. It's cool, right? If I cannot paint and I can express myself, yes, this is nice. We just need to make sure that it works in the right and the ethical and not harming anybody else way. And then this is definitely a positive thing.
I can do things I couldn't do before. So thinking about images, thinking about video, I pay for an Adobe license and I use Firefly, for example, and I shouldn't mention, but I can do things I couldn't do before. So to me, that makes me excited, and I can bring that to my process. For me, being able to create some things, show it to clients, do that, that's all helpful. So that's what gets me excited. I absolutely just want to 100%, reinforce what he said, is that people need to get credit, right? So if it's coming from somewhere, right, we need to be able to attribute it. We need to make sure that people are remunerated, all of those things. So that's why I use certain products that I feel comfortable with. But long term, I look forward to being able to do even more things that I couldn't do before without having to, all that learning behind that would have taken me so much time and probably I wouldn't have done.
The positive sides are many, actually. For example, the automation in the kitchen allowed many people to start fast food joints. If you look at music loops, that enabled many people to creatively create music and things like that. So today, if you look at AI tools or any of those that are mature enough, it enables a lot of people to do a lot of things which otherwise they were very dependent upon on many people and stakeholders. And there's a burst of the entrepreneur spirit, for example, and it enables lots of people to do things strategically from a human-centered design point of view or from a humanity point of view. So there is hope.
Thank you so much for all discussions. Time is over. It's 5 o'clock. Thank you for coming for the first day. It was really inspiring, a lot of great talks. If you don't know what you're doing tonight, there is UX Graz meets Pegasus at the Herzl Weinstuben, a really, really Styrian restaurant where you get really good schnitzel and everything else. Otherwise, we will see us tomorrow morning. We start at 9 a.m., so please come a little bit earlier for the opening. Thanks for coming today, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks.